Welcome back to Medinare. In this video, let's discuss some important questions in human physiology subject. This is going to be very helpful from your university exam aspect. Now I'll be telling the important questions under these sections. Let's start with general physiology and from the long essays. The first question is define hemostasis and explain the feedback mechanism with its suitable examples. So we have to give both positive and negative feedback mechanism for this. The next question is explain the fluid mosaic model of cell membrane and classify transport across the cell membrane with examples. The third question is define active or passive transport and explain the mechanism of active or passive transport of substances across the cell membrane with examples. Don't worry, the question will either carry active or passive transport. That's why I've given both together. Now let's look at the short notes in general physiology. First, it's about the cell membrane again, where we have to write the structure and functions of it. Then every organelle can be asked individually as a 5-mark question or 2-mark question. And then the positive and negative feedbacks again can be asked separately as 5-mark question with examples. The next question can be phagocytosis. The next one is secondary active transport. Classify transport across cell membrane with examples, and then write about diffusion and osmosis and also about sodium-potassium pump. Alright, these are the short notes in general physiology. Moving to the blood chapter. In this, there are certain long essays which are really important, and these questions can be expected in most of the question papers. And this question is going to be really important because here we are going to write about erythropoiesis, and they can ask about the sites and various stages of erythropoiesis with diagram. So the major factor that is going to help you gain more marks here is to draw diagrams. Okay, concentrate more on diagrams while practicing. Next question can be define blood coagulation and enumerate the coagulation factors and explain the mechanism of blood coagulation. The next one is define hemostasis. In the previous section, it is homeostasis, right? Now here it is hemostasis. These two things are way different from each other. Like from reading the question by excitement or by stress, we might tend to misunderstand these two things and write whole different answer for this. So be careful while reading this, and also explain the mechanism of coagulation of blood. So this is again another form of question. Okay, they just mentioned here about hemostasis. Here it is blood coagulation. It can also be asked in this format, which is describe the mechanism of coagulation and add a note on hemophilia, like any other clinical aspects. Next question can be classify white blood cells and enumerate their developmental stages and describe the factors regulating leukopoiesis. Like how we write erythropoiesis, leukopoiesis is equally important. And remember, these questions are from past year question papers. I have referred a lot of question papers and summarized these questions. So here, mostly the questions will be from these topics, but it can be asked in different formats and in different combinations. That's it. That's going to be different. Now let's see the short notes for the blood. Okay, these functions, like basically physiology is going to be about functions. So we are expected to know the functions of blood, plasma proteins, hemoglobin, and many other functions like platelets too. And then extrinsic and intrinsic pathway of blood coagulation. Either one of them can be separately asked as a 5-mark question. Erythroblastosis fetalis, blood groups, and about the clinical aspects again here, anemia, pernicious anemia, and hemophilia. Mostly in physiology, there won't be much of a concentration at the clinical aspects because they will be dealt separately in the general medicine, because it can be also asked in 2 marks or a part in a 10-mark question. So it is better to know all these things. And then classification of WBC and describe the morphology and functions of granulocytes. Again, functions are very important in physiology aspect. So wherever you see function word, just make sure you read it. Some other questions like composition of blood, fate of RBC, polycythemia vera, erythrocyte sedimentation rate, signs and symptoms of anemia. Again, this was a question in past year of one university question paper. Then about heparin, thrombosis, matching and cross-matching was also there, Landsteiner's law, and types of immunity, both active and passive. Either of them can be asked separately. Moving on to the next section, which is nerve and muscle. This is again a chapter which has the potential to come in exam. So let's see this. Okay, define neuromuscular junction and describe how an impulse is transmitted from motor neuron to skeletal muscle fiber, and add a note on neuromuscular blockers. Next question is excitation, contraction, coupling. So these two questions will be asked. Again, the formats and the combinations can be changed. Moving on to the short notes. Here they are asking the structure of neuron with a diagram. Here these are basic questions that we are reading from 12th standard, from our 12th grade, but yet it is a very important topic. Like, don't skip them before you go to exam, just give it a read. Okay, then action potential, important topic. Types of muscle contraction, rigor mortis. Rigor mortis can also be a potential viva question too. Okay, I'll separately make a video on important topics from viva perspective on each subjects. Okay, physiological properties of nerve fiber, refractory period, structures of neuromuscular junction. Again, concentrate more on the diagram here. Diagram is very important in this perspective. So diagram can easily make you get lot of marks. Not contracted proteins, it is contractile proteins. Okay, contractile proteins of muscle. This is a important question again. Differentiate between skeletal, cardiac and smooth muscle. Mostly any two will be asked, but in one question paper all these three were there. And here write about myasthenia gravis and Frank's startling law of muscle contraction. Again a viva question here, but don't worry, I'll make a separate video for viva questions. Next, the next section is gastrointestinal system. Again, very important topic here. Write in detail about the phases, phases of gastric secretion, and also add a note on regulation of gastric secretions. That is one question which is about gastric secretions, and describe the composition, functions and properties of pancreatic juice. Okay, so it is gastric secretion and pancreatic secretion. These two are important in long essays point of view. And also they are asking about the regulation of secretion here. So basically they are asking about the functions or phases of these two secretions along with your regulation. In short notes, peptic ulcer is again an important point, is an important question. Peptic ulcer, functions of saliva, secretin, composition and properties of gastric juice. So if you read it from your 10 mark perspective, it is again easy to write it if it is asked in 5 marks. So gastrin, functions of liver. So again I told you, wherever you see functions in physiology, just give it a read. Okay, enterohepatic circulation, jaundice and its types, functions of gallbladder, functions of small intestine, defecation reflex, gastritis, succus entericus and deglutition. Yeah, these are the short notes from the digestive system or the gastrointestinal system point of view. Moving on to the next, which is renal physiology. Define glomerular filtration rate and discuss in brief or in detail. Sometimes brief means you have to write it in short, or they can also ask us to write in detail about any of these factors, like any of these subtopics. Factors influencing GFR, and they are also asking for its normal value, and add a note on anal clearance. Second question is countercurrent mechanism, and next question is draw a labeled diagram of nephron and describe the mechanism of concentration of urine. Please draw a diagram for this, because only with the help of the diagram you can understand this topic very well. So just concentrate more on diagrams for these things. Short notes are functions of kidney. Again, function is very important. Parts of the nephron, it is also covered in the 10 marks, so don't worry. Difference between cortical and juxtamedullary nephrons. Juxtaglomerular apparatus, important question. Renin angiotensin system is again an important question. Angiotensinogen and its types, renal circulation, factors affecting glomerular filtration rate, and proximal tubular functions. These are the repeated questions in renal physiology. Moving on to the endocrinology chapter. Here they are asking about the synthesis, secretion of thyroxine, okay, the mechanism of action and regulation of secretion of thyroxine, and list out the actions of thyroxine. Add a note on Graves' disease or hyperthyroidism or hypothyroidism in adult or cretinism. Don't worry, they won't ask all of these things in one question at a time. I just combined everything that were asked in different question papers and gave it to you as a single thing, because when you study endocrinology, you don't have to jump between all the past years of different years, so that here you get it in one place, okay? And the second question is, name the hormones from adrenal cortex and explain the physiological actions of glucocorticoids or cortisol. Explain the mechanism of action and regulation of secretion of cortisol. This can vary here, okay? They can ask for different hormones, okay? Just keep this pattern here, and any hormone can be asked in place of cortisol at this place, also in the place of thyroxine. This one is important. Actually, I wrote this for my university exam. Depict calcium distribution in the body and enumerate the functions of calcium. Briefly describe how calcium homeostasis is maintained in the body with diagram, okay? Also, they are asking again about the glucose metabolism. As I told, the format is changing in every question along with the hormone that is required, okay? Name 4 hormones concerned with glucose metabolism and explain their effects on blood glucose, or they can be asked in this way, like name the hormones secreted from the islets of Langerhans, describe the synthesis and their physiological actions. These are the various formats of the question. Mention the normal level of sodium and potassium in the extracellular fluid. Explain the hormonal influence in the sodium and potassium homeostasis or regulation of potassium and sodium level in the body, or discuss the role of aldosterone on sodium and potassium homeostasis. Again, different formats but the same context. Next question is physiological actions of growth hormone and the regulation of secretion of it. And the hormones, like name the hormones secreted from the posterior pituitary and describe their physiological actions and discuss the regulation of secretion of ADH. So basically, concentrate on, try to cover all hormones under these topics, okay? Try to cover all these things, okay? In short notes, they are asking about hypothalamic hypophyseal portal system with diagram, and anterior pituitary hormones and their functions, action of oxytocin and actions of vasopressin. Then also about acromegaly, dwarfism, diabetes insipidus, cretinism, myxedema, exophthalmic goiter, tetany, your Cushing syndrome, adrenogenital syndrome, primary and secondary hyperaldosteronism, diabetes mellitus, hypoglycemia, thyroid function test, mechanism of action and regulation of secretion of all hormones, like any hormone. That will give a great helping hand in writing 10 marks too. Functions of calcium or phosphorus or magnesium or any other things like that. Then moving on to the reproductive system, here for the long essay, this is very important. Menstrual cycle is very important, okay? And describe the ovarian changes or phases of menstrual cycle and changes in reproductive organs in menstrual cycle. So this can be varied. This format can be varied. In short notes, Sertoli cells and its functions, spermatogenesis and its regulation, functions of testosterone, estrogen and its functions, menstrual cycle, seminiferous tubule, progesterone and its functions, feto-placental unit, uterine changes during menstrual cycle, and corpus luteum formation. Corpus luteum is important question here. The things, lactation, OCPs, oral contraceptive pills, amenorrhea, menorrhagia, oligomenorrhea, and functions of placenta. So whenever in any chapter you see any applied aspect, you read it, Okay, applied aspects are important both in MCQ and Viva perspective other than the short note aspect. This can also be asked as a part of a 10-mark question. So applied aspects, if you see anywhere, you study it. Moving on to the cardiovascular system, you are asking here to define the cardiac output, mention the methods to measure it, and what is the normal value. Give 2 examples each for psychological. It is not psychological, it is physiological. Typo, sorry. Explain in detail about the factors maintaining the cardiac output. The next question is about cardiac cycle. Describe the various mechanical events during the ventricular phase of the cycle and draw a diagram correlating the events. Define arterial blood pressure. Next question is about the blood pressure. So in general, we need to write about the blood pressure. And describe the factors regulating it, normal value, and the physiological variations. And explain in detail how human body regulates to maintain normal blood pressure. These are the long essays. In short notes, BP and its regulation were asked about shock, ECG, pacemaker potential, ECG changes during hypokalemia or hyperkalemia, and ECG changes during first degree, second degree, and third degree block. ECG changes in myocardial infarction, and why SA node is called pacemaker of the heart. Physiological significance of the AV nodal delay, triple response, important. Viva 2. Conducting system of the heart. Heart failure, refractory period, baroreceptor mechanism, renal regulation of the blood pressure, coronary circulation, capillary circulation, all are non-law and uses of ECG. The next question is describe the mechanism of respiration with pressure changes in detail. Describe the transport of carbon dioxide in detail. Describe in detail about the transportation of oxygen and define hypoxia and classify them. Explain in detail about its causes and effects of hypoxia and state briefly about oxygen therapy. Things like surfactant, compliance, lung volumes and capacity, spirogram, special features of pulmonary circulation, oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve. This is one very important question. Okay, very important question. Don't skip this part. Okay, oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve, regulation of respiration, acclimatization, acute mountain sickness, dysbarism and dead space, vital capacity, Hamburger phenomenon or chloride shift, and Haldane effect. Moving on to the central nervous system, define pain. It is easy for us to define pain. What are the different types of pain? With the help of a diagram, trace the pain pathway from pace. Pain pathways here is important. Pain pathway is important. Pyramidal tract is also important. Functions of hypothalamus is another 10 mark that I wrote for exam. Functions of cerebellum, enumerate the tracts in the spinal cord and describe the dissenting tracts of spinal cord and write briefly about the spinothalamic tracts. What is thalamus? Thalamic nuclei, functions of thalamus, and add a note on it. Applied physiology. Define basal ganglia, name the components of basal ganglia and explain its functions in detail. Moving on to the short notes, properties of synapse, neuroglia, dorsal column pathway, referred pain, gait control theory, upper motor neuron and lower motor neuron lesions, stretch reflex, withdrawal reflex, EEG, sleep, both REM and non-REM sleep, CSF and blood-brain barrier, reflex arc. Special senses. In special senses, we need to enumerate visual pathway and discuss in detail about the visual receptors, course of the visual pathway, and add a brief note on its applied aspects. Write in detail about the mechanism of hearing and add a brief note on its auditory defects. Glaucoma, refractive errors, photochemistry of vision, color vision, light reflex, accommodation reflex, dark adaptation, auditory pathway, organ of Corti, functions of middle ear, taste pathway, and olfactory pathway. Now, in conclusion, I would like to tell you that all these questions are from past years. You should read these questions thoroughly before you enter your exam, because any of these can come in your exams. Okay, mostly 70% of your paper are from these questions, because mostly they will concentrate on the past year papers to ask the set the question paper. So if you cover all these questions, then it will be easy for you, then you will be confident enough to give your paper. In the upcoming videos, I'll give you important questions in every subject from first year to final year. And if you want to add anything or if you have any suggestions, please do leave it in the comment section below. Do like this video and subscribe to Medinare for more. Thanks for watching.